Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now.
All right, welcome back to Jay Sekulow Live. This is Jordan Sekulow. So we have picked up on this new campaign by an abortion clinic in Ohio called, disgustingly, Preterm, myabortionmylife.org. They've got an advertising campaign. They're the biggest abortion clinic in Ohio. They're based in Cleveland. We've got some samples up for our Facebook and Periscope audience. In the blog, my wife Anna actually saw this first in the news, and so she wrote a blog about this. Again, I think that it started with, abortion is necessary. Abortion is gender equality. Abortion is right for me. That's kind of like the typical abortion talking points. I'm kind of used to those. Abortion is a parenting decision. Really? You're just deciding not to be a parent. I mean, again, these are those kind of statements like saying abortion is hope, life-saving. The only time it's life-saving is when the mother's life is at risk. And by the way, those kind of abortions ain't happening at these clinics. Those are happening usually at hospitals under very specific care after a long thought process by a husband and wife about whether to proceed with a very risky pregnancy that would potentially, in the mother's life, that's a choice for the couple. That's why the procedure itself exists. Abortion is normal. It's a lot different than what they used to say that should be rare. Now it's normal. But then they get into all the religiosity. And this is when we talk about that these abortionists and their clinics and the pro-abortion community and their activists and the abortionists themselves worship abortion. They have an altar to abortion. And their faith is abortion because of the terminology they use. You're not going to see it like a normal doctor running signs about any procedures, even good procedures. It's just they do their job to try and save lives. They're not out there as activists. These read more like something like Jesus is hope, or Jesus is a blessing, or faith is a blessing, or the community, the YMCA that just opened up is a blessing to the community. No, they say abortion is a family value, so that gets into religiosity a little bit. But even more so, doubling down, abortion is a blessing. Abortion is sacred. That's going to be one of the billboards. Abortion is safer than childbirth, and abortion is good medicine. But I want to get to that religiosity. I think that's very important that we pick up on, because the religious words, I think, are very important. One, abortion's not a blessing for a baby who never gets to live, and it's certainly not a blessing for a mother to end the life of the baby growing inside her. She may think so at the time, but she'll never hear that heartbeat again. And so you have to wonder, is this campaign really an attempt not just to persuade people who are not thinking about having abortions, but in fact, people who are having abortions and the abortionists themselves? Because we've seen those people from those clinics who have left and said it's disgusting. We've seen abortionists quit their jobs. Because is it kind of an attempt to give people a false sense of hope that they will not feel guilt because of this decision for decades to come? Because we have had hundreds, if not thousands, of radio callers say, even when they were minors and had these abortions, they cannot get it out of their mind that it has wrecked them throughout their life, that they have gotten forgiveness by Christ, but they still can't stop thinking about what that child would be. And again, I think that when it goes to ultimately the idea that they all want to feel like what they're doing is okay. Like the abortionists, maybe, I don't even know if they have a heart really left anymore when they're doing these procedures. But by calling it sacred, it's like trying to make that woman who's having the abortion feel like what they're doing is okay. That taking the life of their child is an okay thing to do, and it's good for family values. It's sickening. But folks, the pro-abortion industry, they're on the attack. I mean, Than, that we're now at the Supreme Court of the United States. We wanted the Fourth Circuit trying to force pro-life pregnancy centers to put up messages to say you can't get abortions here. Here's where you can get an abortion.
And Jordan, I would tell you it's impossible to walk down the street here in Washington, D.C., whether it's to the Supreme Court or the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate, without running into activists and volunteers from Planned Parenthood. So this is a calculated strategy on their part to advance their agenda. But guess what, Jordan? We're going to meet them there on the streets, and we're going to meet them there in the halls of Congress and at the Supreme Court.
And you have to call them out for this absurdity. We're grateful that we have this broadcast because of your support of the ACLJ. So we can do just that. Spend this time calling out the absurdity of the abortion industry. You can get involved. We have a petition to stop the shutdown of pro-life pregnancy centers. We are in all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court right now. You can sign that petition at ACLJ.org. So get involved in the fight back against big abortion. Stand with the pro-life pregnancy centers doing that incredible work. ACLJ.org. Sign the petition today as we head to the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll be right back.
The stage is set at the U.S. Supreme Court, where we are battling big abortion. At the American Center for Law and Justice, it's our sacred duty to defend unborn babies. We have two massive pro-life cases pending at the Supreme Court. One could save countless babies. The other could devastate the abortion industry. Now, big abortion is trying to force pro-life pregnancy centers to promote free taxpayer-funded abortions or be shut down. In that case, we have just filed one of the most important pro-life briefs ever at the Supreme Court to save babies. It's a critical time in the fight for life, and we could not be on the front lines at the Supreme Court without your generous support. Stand with the ACLJ now. Support the pro-life work of the American Center for Law and Justice. It's easy to make that happen. Go online, make a gift at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
Yeah, during our break, we played a part of a documentary that we provided to donors and people who donated that they could watch online. They'd have a code. It's called Choosing Life.
Yeah.
Many people still are getting this code right in the email.
Yeah, and
donate.
There's one more recently. It's Abortion Inc., which is the latest film we did. We just did it mid last year, and it is. You can go to aclj.org. If you go there, click videos, and you'll see a tab for ACLJ films, and there's a lot of steps. And you can say if you make a tax-deductible gift, you'll be sent a code to where you can watch the film stuff.
So, I think that it's got a lot of women who are brave enough to go and tell their stories about what it was like in these abortion clinics. And they even talk about the physicality, the roughness they are, and after the fact, what they were doing. And if they saw someone like them in their condition post-abortion, they probably would have walked out of the door. But see, there's two doors in abortion clinics, one for people going in and then one for people going out, and they don't see each other. This is part of a documentary. It's called Abortion Inc. Let's take a look at that trailer right now.
When a woman gets pregnant, their motherly instincts just kick right into gear. It's how we're wired, it's how we're created, and I short-circuited mine.
I still remember staring up at that bright light and counting backwards from 10.
It was very, very painful. I've never felt pain like that in my life. I remember the nurse giving me sedation, and she just kept rubbing my arm, shushing me.
I didn't want the baggage because I had a vision for my life, and it didn't include children.
When I found myself pregnant, Roe v. Wade had just happened. It was all in the news. I called my doctor. He said, no problem. We can take care of it.
I was told it was just a blob of tissue. I wasn't given any choices as far as ultrasounds or why don't you go home, think about it, and then come back. Nothing like that. There was nothing positive.
When I stood up, and I fainted. I think I fainted because of the horror of what I had done. I realized that I was missing a large part of me.
I actually ended up being pretty volatile and got a little physical with the nurse. I slapped her across the face. And I remember because I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to know. They don't let you walk back out the front. There's a private exit. And later on in life, I wondered, had I seen someone like me in the state I was in at that moment after that abortion walk out, back out the front clinic, maybe I wouldn't have done it.
Logan, let's take some more calls.
All right, let's go to Laura, who's calling in Tempe, Arizona, on line 2.
Hey, Laura.
Hi. I've unfortunately had 3 abortions, and no woman I've ever talked to has been proud of that. My first one was when I was 16 years old, and they took me to California because in Arizona it wasn't legal. And the Planned Parenthood in California told me that it wasn't going to be any problem. I would forget about it quickly. And that wasn't the case. I'm 61 years old now. I haven't forgotten. And I believe that God wants me to stand up for people that are pro-life.
Well, go ahead, Laura.
Wrong. I'm sorry.
Well, Laura, you are exactly what we're talking about with who they are trying to target with these ads. They don't want the abortion industry, Laura, to hear people like you. Because I want you to tell people again, what age were you when you had these abortions and your age now, because you did offer that. I wouldn't usually ask a woman her age, but you did offer that. And the fact that this is still really kind of haunting you and on your mind today. Tell people that again, because it wasn't 5 years ago.
No, I was 16. That was my first time. I was 20, and I was 22.
And now?
I'm 61 now.
And it's still, you feel the pain. And Laura, you know you're forgiven. I applaud you for being brave to join us on the air, because I think the calls from individuals like you, I mean, you were living in that time period where, one, your parents were forcing it on you. Two, the abortion industry was running rampant without any regulation after Roe versus Wade, and basically telling people exactly that. No big deal, just like any other little medical procedure, in, you're out, won't matter. And what they forgot was the mental effect and the psychological effect that people are going to think later in life, what if I had had that child? I mean, that's not just so as calmly as I said it, but seriously, what if I had had those 3 children, that family? And what would my life be like? What would their lives be like? But yet I took their lives because I was, in Laura's case, forced into it. You are forgiven by God, and I think sharing your story is the exact opposite of what these ads are trying to do, which is tell people that it's a blessing to go and have an abortion, and that it's sacred, and that it's safer than other medical procedures, and it's part of family values. You are the contrast to that, Laura. So keep up your work supporting those who are pro-life. Back to the phones we go.
All right, let's do it. Let's go to Jackie on line 6. You're on the air.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi. I also had abortions. I had more than one myself, and I had one at 17, but I never forgot it either. And I still think about it. I'm 60, and I think about it almost every day, if not every day. It is not a blessing, and I wish I hadn't done it. I wish, and I do think, I wonder what would my child be like today if I had given my child a chance to make it. And they had no idea that they were selling body parts.
Yeah.
I had no idea of the history of the founder.
Right, Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenicist and a racist, wanted to create kind of this Hitler-esque perfect race in America. And get rid of the undesirables, if you will. So single mothers, don't allow those families. The poor, the black community was specifically targeted by Margaret Sanger. Yet they still give out Margaret Sanger awards. They are eugenicists. I mean, that's at the bottom line. They want they focus. Go figure out where your abortion clinics are in most of your cities and towns. Right. They're in the bad parts of town. There's a reason why. It's not because people with money don't have abortions. They do, but they push these free abortions that are subsidized on the poor because they believe that they shouldn't be having more children. I mean, that's the truth, and they want to do something about it. That's what eugenics is, and they want to create this better society and race through carrying that out. You are brave by calling in and sharing your stories, folks. I think this changes minds. Anybody listening right now who may be even thinking about making this decision, or has a family member they're talking to thinking about this decision, you can be the difference because of telling your story of how it's affected you 40 plus years later in life.
People have asked about the funding of Planned Parenthood, funding of abortion providers. They keep hearing it's going to be cut, but what is actually the status on that?
All right, so Than, initially this was in the replacement and repeal of the Affordable Care Act that did not make its way through Congress because of a few senators, including Senator McCain, that Planned Parenthood would have been defunded. And we found out through Planned Parenthood's new report that their single largest funding source, 35% of their funds, come directly through government reimbursements and government funding over $500 million, like $537 million, comes from the government. Their prenatal services have gone down 80% over the last decade or so, and basically their abortion numbers remain right about the same, in about the 320,000 abortions just in the U.S. They are the number one abortion provider in the U.S. But then there are still efforts in Congress. I mean, obviously the midterms will have an effect on this as well, to get the defunding of Planned Parenthood done. But it is kind of like, the tax cut battle. It's one of those, I think, decades-long battles to get the kind of change here. And we've been fighting it, but it takes that long. And I know people are still working on it, and our audience is still encouraging the fight.
Oh, we're still talking about it every single day here on Capitol Hill, Jordan. And you talk about more than $500 million from U.S. taxpayers in funding. The vast majority of that comes through the Medicaid program. And the Obamacare repeal legislation that, you're right, died in the Senate, would have stripped all of that funding away. And Jordan, on that one, that really lie at the feet of Senate Republicans who did not get that over the line. But I will tell you this: if Democrats in the United States Senate reflected the wishes of their voters, this would not have to go through a reconciliation package, because roughly 2 out of every 3 Americans from every political stripe do not want their funds to go for abortion. Regardless of how they feel about the issue in general, they do not want to pay for it. So on the broader issue, it lies at the feet of both Republicans and Democrats to stop this funding. And again, Jordan, if they would reflect the will of their voters, you wouldn't have to go through a reconciliation package. You could get the 60 votes required for that, and the $544 million that goes through Planned Parenthood from the taxpayers, that could end this year.
We have a petition to stop the shutdown of pro-life pregnancy centers. We are in all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court right now. You can sign that petition at ACLJ.org. So get involved in the fight back against big abortion. Stand with the pro-life pregnancy centers doing that incredible work. ACLJ.org. Sign the petition today as we head to the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll be right back.
The stage is set at the U.S. Supreme Court, where we are battling big abortion. At the American Center for Law and Justice, it's our sacred duty to defend unborn babies. We have 2 massive pro-life cases pending at the Supreme Court. One could save countless babies. The other could devastate the abortion industry. Now, big abortion is trying to force pro-life pregnancy centers to promote free taxpayer-funded abortions or be shut down. In that case, we have just filed one of the most important pro-life briefs ever at the Supreme Court to save babies. It's a critical time in the fight for life, and we could not be on the front lines at the Supreme Court without your generous support. Stand with the ACLJ now. Support the pro-life work of the American Center for Law and Justice. It's easy to make that happen. Go online, make a gift at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
There is the largest abortion clinic in Cleveland, Ohio, is running a new billboard campaign. The first message that went up is that, quote, abortion is a blessing. And here's how the abortion industry explains why their billboard campaign, I mean, listen, they're doing well financially, these abortion clinics. Why do they need to do it? And they say because abortion is a normal and necessary part of people's lives. Normal and necessary. That's a lot different than safe, legal, and rare. Now it's normal and necessary, just like even more so than going to the dentist, because again, or just having a normal checkup once a year with your doctor. It's normal, it's necessary. I guess it's like a haircut to them. Think about that for a moment. How ironically sick and twisted. I mean, when you're talking about abortion, you're talking about taking an unborn child's life and saying that's a necessary part of life. To do that, to take an unborn child's life, ending life. Here's some of the other messages that are going to be going up. There's 16 in total. Here's some they're already planning to be up around Cleveland, Ohio. And Planned Parenthood nationally, by the way, is sending all of this out. So they're putting all of this out for this abortion clinic, Ohio. Abortion is a blessing. Abortion is sacred. Okay, let's start right there. We often say at the ACLJ that the abortion industry and these clinics and abortionists worship at an altar of abortion, that abortion to them is a religion. It is not like lobbying for a corporate interest or an oil company. They actually worship the procedure and the ending of the child's life. They worship abortion. And this is the living proof of that, because the language that they use about abortion is religious. Abortion is a blessing. Abortion is sacred. Abortion is hope. Abortion is a family value. Think about that one for a moment. You're ending the chance at a family for that child in the womb. They won't experience mom and dad, grandpa and grandma, or aunts and uncles, or even other brothers and sisters. Abortion is liberty. You mean we could just willy-nilly kill off those children we don't want so we have that liberty, but that child has none. They have no decision to make here. Abortion is health care. Now, there's only limited, tiny percent of circumstances, as that caller mentioned, where there could be because I always want to be fair in these discussions, so that the abortion industry can't say, "Well, you didn't mention this." The only time it's a healthcare matter is when a real doctor, who OBGYN is working with a couple having a child, and there's a complication arises, and the mother's life, not health, not she may not feel good or mentally this is causing trouble. She's not sleeping great. We're talking about life is in danger. She may die, and they do, a kind of risk analysis if she goes ahead with having this child and moves forward with the pregnancy. That is why the procedure itself exists, and it's why even all pro-life laws allow for an exception to be made there. It's a horrible decision that anyone would ever have to make, the worst. But that's why the procedure even exists. It's a horrible procedure that exists for that purpose, that if the woman's life really is in danger, and that you're getting that from a real doctor, you get to then make the decision as a couple. But then, of course, they go a step further that abortion's good medicine. Except for doctors take a Hippocratic oath to protect and save lives. These abortionists, who are technically doctors, are getting paid only to do one thing: take life. Take and end and kill. And they make money off of doing that. I just think that when Planned Parenthood tries and these pro-abortion groups try to go on the offensive, we've got to push back fast.
Let's go to Sarah in Ohio on line 6. Sarah, thanks for calling.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Sarah.
I'm calling because I want to really encourage the listeners in Ohio to give generously to the pro-life centers who are trying to reach women who are abortion-minded.
Well, I think that it's exactly right, Sarah. I mean, you're in Ohio. I don't know what part of Ohio, and you don't have to say that on the air. This is specifically happening in Cleveland. It's the largest clinic in Ohio, so I have a feeling because of that, it has a reach outside of just the Cleveland area. Because the abortion industry had faced more regulations now, some of the smaller clinics and those shoddy clinics have shut down. This is one of the large ones. And even one of the largest ones here, and it's called, by the way, disgustingly preterm. It's just disgusting that they call their clinic. Someone died there. A woman died at this clinic.
Our producer just sent me a statement from their website. Preterm says, Preterm touts being a green business, stating that we work in a way that is healthier and reduces our impact on our planet.
Yeah, so what do they do with those fetuses, I wonder? That they love to call fetuses, we call babies. That they I guess they sell them off, right? We're not making extra money. They sell them to the body parts people, which is getting more attention in the news lately, thankfully as well, because there's people going to jail for illegally selling these body parts, not just children, but also adult as well.
All right, should we take another call?
Yeah.
Let's go to Roger in Chicago, Illinois. You're on the air, Roger, on line 5.
I think it's interesting that we always seem to sometimes shy away from who really places value on life in the womb, which is God. And in my discussions, I found that people who don't have a strong view of God have sometimes a lower view of value of life. And we have to always remember this is where it comes from. And I think the other thing we need to do is we really need to continue and work on better educating people on the exact procedures and processes that happen to these child and ask ourselves, what would we do if this was happening to a live human being right in front of us?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if this was happening to a live human being, the person who did it would go to jail for life and in some states face the death penalty. That's exactly what would happen, regardless of the age of that human being. If they were intentionally killing them, dismembering them, which is in many cases here, a child or an adult for that matter, they would be going to jail for intentional murder. Intentional homicide carries the harshest penalties. It's either life in prison or, depending on where you live, death. And so, by the way, if you're in a car wreck or and you're intoxicated, and in many states, if you are in that wreck and a pregnant woman is in the wreck and she passes away, or the baby she is carrying passes away, you can be charged with murder.
Or double murder.
Or double murder in that case, because you're committing a crime. It's not an accident by the DUI. So you are committing homicide, but it's double homicide. So you see, the law doesn't even make sense on this. The law will punish people who are not abortionists for taking the life in the womb. And yet the law also protects the abortionist from intentionally taking the life in the womb. And they call that choice, and that's okay. Even though, we still do believe it's a life that's worth getting the, prison term for in a situation. I mean, the law has never made sense. That's why Roe versus Wade is bad law. Well, Dan, walk through the numbers again through Planned Parenthood. Their budget has gone up. Their single largest funder of Planned Parenthood is now the government, and their services outside of abortion have gone down.
Really, the evidence of everything you're saying, Jordan, can be found in their own numbers. I'm holding in my hands their report. So they report that they get almost $544 million from the U.S. taxpayers, have almost $1.5 billion in revenue. And, Jordan, I'll just give you two more numbers. 321,384 abortions. That is every single life snuffed out by one of those procedures. Jordan, they report 7,762 prenatal services. And we know from previous reports that means they serviced about 1,300 prenatal clients. So, Jordan, just over 1,000 prenatal clients, more than 321,000 abortions. You tell me what their business model is rooted in. They don't provide prenatal care. Those are footnotes in their reports.
Folks, today on the show, you've got the information. You know we're battling this in court right now, all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Briefs are being filed because there is an attempt to force pro-life pregnancy centers, to force them to refer people for abortions. People who are going to a pro-life pregnancy center, and these states are trying to force those pro-life pregnancy centers to say, you've got to tell people where they can get an abortion and where they can get abortion services. Totally against their purpose and calling and what they do. And it's targeted speech, focusing on a certain viewpoint. It's unconstitutional. We fought it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The briefs are being filed there now. You can take action as well by signing our petition. There's two ways to do so. You can go to ACLJ.org and sign the petition. Stop the shutdown of pro-life pregnancy centers. That's at ACLJ.org. You can also sign the petition by calling our toll-free number right now, 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255, or go to aclj.org and sign that petition today.
The stage is set at the U.S. Supreme Court, where we are battling big abortion. At the American Center for Law and Justice, it's our sacred duty to defend unborn babies. We have two massive pro-life cases pending at the Supreme Court. One could save countless babies. The other could devastate the abortion industry. Now, Big Abortion is trying to force pro-life pregnancy centers to promote free taxpayer-funded abortions or be shut down. In that case, we have just filed one of the most important pro-life briefs ever at the Supreme Court to save babies. It's a critical time in the fight for life, and we could not be on the front lines at the Supreme Court without your generous support. Stand with the ACLJ now. Support the pro-life work of the American Center for Law and Justice. It's easy to make that happen. Go online, make a gift at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.